Hey everybody, it's amazing to be here, and I really enjoyed the speeches that I was able to watch and the musical performances, and it really reinforced my belief that the theme I'm going to be talking about is an important one, particularly to folks in middle school, because I once was 12 and 13. And how old are y'all? Can I just get a survey? 18, 13, 14, 12, 19? 20, cool. Yeah, my sister's going to turn 20 in December, and as I was talking to her, I was like, wow, 20, you're gonna be old, because 20 was that age that we just thought of as like the objective measure of adulthood when we were kids. And as I was thinking about all of these numbers and how I'm 17 now, and I never really expected that I could be a 17-year-old, because teenagers were big, scary people to me. Fun fact, I once nearly drowned in a neighborhood pool because I was so terrified of a bunch of teenagers that I saw in the corner. So who would have thought that I would grow into one of those people that I was terrified of? But I remember very poignantly this moment from when I was around your age, and I was a weird kid. I got to skip grades, and so when I was 13, I started 10th grade. And when I was 13, I lost my voice. Now, I don't mean the kind of losing your voice that happens when you get laryngitis or a really bad cold and you're hacking away in the classroom. I mean the kind of losing your voice that happens when you're going to your first day of high school. And my high school intimidated me. It was all big, high-ceilinged hallways and glass and brick. But more terrifying than the architecture of this place that seemed so distant from my home was the geometry of its social groups. The rectangles made by boys and girls crowding at these long lunch tables were the perfect radii of friend circles. I had never been good at math, unlike one of the other speakers you heard, but these shapes seemed more impenetrable than anything I'd ever seen in a textbook. Maybe I was scared and unconfident because I was very young compared to everyone in my grade, even after turning 14, finally, that October. So I spent a lot of time in the library, where no one expected you to speak. I like to talk in class, but I always thought really carefully about what to say before raising my hand. Maybe some of you have done this, where you rehearse your words before a single one has even left your mouth. So my questions and comments came out rushed. I would raise my hand and I would say something, and it had the sound of something I'd waited a long time to get off my chest, because in a way, I guess I was waiting. It was just the kind of waiting that nobody sees, the kind of waiting that twists your guts with second guessing before you finally torturously raise your hand. And as a kid, I would present to these auditoriums full of elementary school kids. I would teach them about reading and writing, and I wondered, as I got older and I presented to older and older kids, why high schoolers stopped raising their hands and why college kids never raised their hands at all. And I realized finally when I got to high school what had started going on. One of my friends said, "Adora, you really mumble in AP Psych." And I had never been told I mumbled before. I gave TED Talks, I didn't mumble. But this week I was actually at the TED Women Conference in Monterey, California, and multiple people would kind of lean towards me and ask me to speak up because they couldn't hear what I was saying very well in these noisy rooms where people were networking. And one woman confided in my mom later, she was so quiet that I could barely hear her. Me being quiet? I was never the quiet child. You know how some kids get labeled as shy, quiet? I wasn't that kid. There's this home video of my 5th birthday party. If you feel like YouTube stalking me, you can go to my mom's channel, youtube.com/JoySvitak, scroll down my videos and find Adora5thbirthday.avi. But if you take my word for it, I was the loudest kid in the room, not just because it was my birthday party, but because I was obnoxious and I wanted to own that room. Every time the camera turned, my head would swivel to follow it. I made faces, I smirked, I preened, I ran around, and with my bobbed hair and pink dress, I looked every bit like DW from that kid's show, Arthur. Any Arthur fans in the house? Yeah! That's right. So yeah, I hope you can imagine me a little bit shorter and, with my hair short. I was this really exuberant kid. When I was 3 years old, I would climb onto a boulder that was like taller than I was at a local park, and I would start yelling to anyone who would listen about the environment and politics and why everyone should vote for me to be president, because it was the year 2000 and I was parroting everything that I saw on TV with Al Gore and George Bush during the election season. I presented to these really rowdy groups of elementary school kids, and I gave that speech at TED that you saw earlier, And you would think that all of this public speaking, all of this getting up in front of hundreds or even sometimes thousands of people reflected a passion and gregariousness, an outspokenness, a loudness so innate that they would never go away. Yet time taught me something else. Time taught me that being liked and being quiet were one and the same. Not quiet in the sense of not saying anything, but quiet in terms of emotion, passion, duration of speech. Picture an impassioned speaker for a moment, bellowing words about grand ideals like liberty and justice and freedom. Run a Google search, as I did, for great orators, and the first 9 people listed, folks like Patrick Henry, William Jennings Bryan, and Martin Luther King Jr. are men. Imagine for a moment that Patrick Henry had been a woman. Imagine, give me liberty or give me death in a woman's voice. And do you think it would sound stronger if I had said that higher pitched? We associate, when we try to say things in a strong way, when I try to say things in a strong way, I find myself, maybe subconsciously, without meaning to, trying to go deeper instead of higher, trying to sound more like a man and less like what we think a woman sounds like. If these great orators who come up on a Google search were women, some of their greatest lines and some of their most powerful moments in which they were leaning towards audiences and yelling so loud that the spit might fly towards the front row, they would be called crazy, hysterical, hormonal, overreacting. These are all words that we use to describe women who commit the crime of being passionate about something. In my dormitory, because I just finished my freshman year at UC Berkeley, there was a room the floor above me, and I would go there occasionally to hang out and do work after one of my roommates had gone to sleep. And it was in this room with the 3 guys who lived there that I would get into these incredibly interesting conversations about everything from racism and sexism to problematic language and freedom of speech. The boys there made irreverent jokes, they humored my inability to make small talk, and they frequently disagreed with me about just about everything. I liked them, and I wanted them to like me too. I didn't think that they would like someone they perceived as a paranoid Berkeley shiksa feminista, to quote Josh Lyman's memorable comment to C.J. Craig on The West Wing, which is a TV show about politics in Washington, D.C. that my favorite teacher in high school showed us quite often. So I brought the volume down on my passion because I didn't want to be perceived that way. Sometimes in my desire to be liked, I would let the sticker on my laptop or the slogan on my shirt say more about my feminism than my words. You see, likability is a far harder bar to reach than mere civility. Likability and seeking it meant muting anger or sadness or frustration because I knew that trying to be Patrick Henry would earn more ridicule than solidarity. I saved my sound bites for words I could type on a screen. A screen because there, a voice too loud, a voice too high-pitched, too screechy, too woman would not betray me. And just as I did in class, I thought too much about everything I was about to say, trying to slice down words so that I could say something concise and fast and jam-packed with information, so that I would not have to open my mouth too soon again. I would try to respond to a paragraph that a boy might say with a sentence, respond to a sentence with a word. I say try because often I didn't actually manage to do that, which is a very good thing, and those friends will probably tell you that I talked a lot. Interesting discussions would move too fast for me to write a monologue and rehearse this sorry player before she dashed on stage. And I use the metaphor of acting particularly because last semester I had the chance to be in an improv class. And has anyone here done drama at all? You can raise your hand. Oh, this explains so much. Y'all are really cool. And so anyone who's done drama, who's done improv, will know that sometimes it can be amazing getting this very deliberate break from the normal performance of everyday life. I got to play angry girlfriends, disappointed parents, screaming children, and one day I launched into a vicious tirade at a roommate for being a freeloader who stole my drug paraphernalia, again, very different from real life. And I started spitting curses and threats with clenched teeth and drawn fists, saying a lot of words that, as you can imagine, I would never say and never need to say to anyone outside of that room, outside of improv. Now, after that moment, the teachers of that class gave us some feedback, and one of them told me, Adora, we like your stuff, but you tend to act these really aggressive roles all the time. And it made me question, what was it about the actively aggressive, the loud, the all up in your face communicative that attracted me so much in the world of improv? Perhaps it was my way of reclaiming what I didn't have in real life. It was amazing to have the space where I could be so unapologetically angry. It felt like stepping out from behind the mask of the girl who said sorry every minute, so conscious of speaking too much or being perceived as overly emotional. This mask was the generic nice girl mask. We've all worn it. We've wanted to be called nice. Nice girl clung so closely to my skin that sometimes I wasn't sure if it was a mask at all. But improv reminded me that I could switch out that mask for far more empowering disguises. I could be angry, weepy, clingy, a bunch of words that I ran away from in real life, I ran toward in make-believe. I firmly believe that life should be more than a series of masquerade balls, but we all force each other to wear disguises sometimes. One time I was at a cafe with a friend and I was laughing uproariously at something he had said. I'm sure we were talking about farting. It's probably the only thing that would do it. And before I even realized it, he was looking at me with this really strange expression, so immediately I stopped laughing and I said, "What is it? What's wrong?" And he said tersely, "You were just laughing like really loud." So I shut up. I told him months later about that moment and he felt terrible. He started apologizing me profusely, said that he felt like it was obviously a formative moment if I still remembered it, and I was like, don't flatter yourself, it was important, but it was not the defining moment of my life. Because many, many other people have told me to be quiet. My sister has told me to be quiet. At New Year's Eve, I was being obnoxious and she yelled, "Be quiet" to me every 5 minutes. And that was a night that reminded me of what it was like to be 5 again. Perhaps loud, definitely obnoxious, but perfectly content and unaware that anyone could dislike me for being loud, for being happy, for being unapologetic. So let's be who we are. And I know those seem like empty words a lot of the time. We've heard speakers who reinforce the idea that society often uses those as buzzwords with little real meaning. But I say this as somebody who tries a lot to be liked. I mean, when you write and when you do public speaking, you don't really have an audience and you don't have readers if to some extent you aren't likable. And so of course I want to be liked. It's part of what I do. It seems to be part of who I am. But no matter how much wanting to be liked makes us human, and no matter how much it might be central to what you want to do, I don't think that we have to be people that we're not in order to win approval from the people we really care about. At the end of summer camp, when I was 14 years old, I remember I had a philosophy class that was really life-changing. It was incredibly enlightening, and for the first time in a very academic setting, we had the chance to discuss things that I didn't really get to talk about in high school. We talked about abortion, and we talked about murder, and we talked about all these really hardcore ethical issues. And I remember I raised my hand and I delivered this really impassioned statement, not only addressing the rational arguments for being pro-choice, but also a very emotional one, saying that I didn't want to live in a world where the fate of my body was not my own to decide. I didn't hold back at all. It was a moment when I felt like I had pushed the mute button just completely out the window. And after the last loud, determined word left my lips, one of my classmates looked me right in the eyes, nodded slowly, and said, "Dang." I look back to that 5-year-old at her birthday party and that 14-year-old in a rare moment of unmuted emotion in a class, and I hope to echo their voices a little more when I next open my mouth. That doesn't mean I'm going to be loud and outgoing all the time. There is no one right way to speak, no one right way to talk. What it does mean is this: I don't want to apologize for taking up space. I don't want to renounce my emotions and my beliefs as liabilities. We exact too high a price from girls for growing up when we start to condemn each other and ourselves for speaking too much or too strongly. And we exact a price from boys, too, when we stigmatize narratives of weakness or doubt or vulnerability that chip away at the toxic veneer of the real man. Weakness, doubt, and vulnerability, sure, they're all things that could be seen as feminine, but really these are just things that make us human. The masks we wear, all they do is hide us, put painted expressions on our faces, and make us look at each other through narrowed perspectives. It's all too easy to live life missing out on peripheral vision. But as someone who wears glasses, I am beseeching you, don't do it. Saying that one is finding their voice or in the process of looking for it implies that a voice can only be in one place, in one time, existing in a binary of here or there, lost or found, loud or quiet. But when I go looking for my voice, I realize that it's in many places, doing many things, being many volumes. Maybe it's standing and bellowing atop a boulder, "Vote for me to be president," even though I'm only 3 years old, shrieking down the hill where I run at 6, smearing mud on my face like war paint, or emerging fast as wheels whipping around a velodrome when I start to talk in a debate. Not limited to here or there, lost nor found, loud nor quiet. You see, when I was 13, I thought I'd lost my voice. But in realizing what it is not, I think I'm beginning to learn how to speak. Thank you.